Over the last 3 months or so, ChatGPT and similar AI technology has been a super hot topic and continues to be. ChatGPT represents a huge leap forward in artificial intelligence. I have a special guest with me today, and we're going to delve into the limits and the possibilities of this incredible technology and what it means for business owners. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe you must remove your revenue roadblocks to accelerate growth, and marketing shouldn't be difficult. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I am super excited to have with me Sam Tomlinson from Warschawski. Sam, welcome, and thanks for being here, man.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Tim. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to digging into this. I certainly am not a ChatGPT expert, but I know you have spent a lot of time thinking about this. I know when we initially connected for the pre-interview, I was super impressed, man, with some of the things that you had to share. So I know you're going to drop some serious bombs on us today. Before we do that, I want to ask you some rapid fire questions. Help us get to know you. You ready to rock?
Let's do it.
Okay. When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
I would say 2 years ago, I would answer that by playing golf. Now I've got a 2-year-old daughter, so I love spending time with my kid. It's honestly a lot of fun.
Isn't it funny how our hobbies change as we have kids?
It's so huge.
Yeah. I used to play a ton of golf, and then it's like, oh my God, I don't have 5 or 6 hours to just go off and do this.
Now I feel like I need to hire my nanny on a Saturday and be like, watch her so I can go play golf, please. That'd be great.
What's your hidden talent?
I love to cook. I love to cook. I hate to bake, but I love to cook.
Love to cook. Anything in particular you like to cook?
I kind of run the gamut. I think in a different life, I might have started a restaurant, been a chef, but I feel like if I ever would have done that, I would have hated to cook. You know what I mean? It's fun because it's a hobby, but I love classic French cuisine and Italian cuisine. So those two for sure. After that, whatever.
Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Probably that you pay to learn. My grandfather always told me that. He's like, everything seems free, but you always pay to learn. So you're either going to pay in time, money, or suffering. So just understand how you're paying.
That is actually a very good piece of advice because it's so true. I think so many of us default to I'm not going to pay for that. But damn, you spend a ton of time, so you pay one way or the other.
You always pay. So it was a really good mindset shift for me to be like, okay, actually, free doesn't mean free. No. Free just means no dollars, but there's another cost associated. And if you don't understand that, I think it's really hard to be successful over the long term. So
and oftentimes too, if we pay to learn, actually pay by paying money. It helps us get where we want to go much faster.
It's often the cheapest. It's often the cheapest way is to pay cash.
What's one thing about you that surprises people?
That one's tough. I think a lot of it is that I probably read more than anybody else, which surprises people a lot. I probably try to spend 2 to 3 hours a day reading stuff. Just novels.
Do you read fast?
Yeah. But it's, a combination of, and I read the same thing probably 5 or 10 times. I've read The Intelligent Investor, I think cover to cover 7 times.
You always pick up something different, right?
You do. And I think, I pick up something different and sometimes I look at something different, which surprises people. And a lot of it's just, okay, I'll give you a very simple example. I was at a Bruce Springsteen concert this weekend. I love Bruce Springsteen. And there's a song he plays called The River. And when I was a kid, it was a warning song because it was about a young couple that, they got pregnant at 18 and he had to abandon all of his dreams of getting out of his town and whatever. It's actually about Bruce Springsteen's sister. And when I was a kid, that song was a warning. If you make bad choices, you're going to get stuck in this town forever. And I look back on it as an adult and I'm like, it's kind of a love song because this guy gave up a son of dreams, and now he has a daughter that he loves, and he's married to his wife and he loves her. And, this is a great song. But teenage me was like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Adult me is like, it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think I get the same thing from books, right? You look at it from your current perspective, and the lessons that you may have never seen as when I read it 5 years ago, I read it now. I'm like, huh, that's clever.
So it's so interesting because you're in a different place every time you read it, right? Or every time you listen to that song.
100%.
And because of being in that different place, maybe having a different perspective, having more experience, you pull something different out of it.
So
I love that. What does success mean to you?
I think that's another one where the definition changes, right? Obviously, we all have financial goals, and I want to get to a place where I can, do all the things that I want to do in terms of, travel, spend time, not work until I'm like 90. That seems good.
Yeah.
But I think more and more to me, it's being able to do most of that, 90% of that, while being 100% present for my kid. So that's always a tension for me, but it's evolving. We'll say it that way.
Where's your happy place?
Generally speaking, on a golf course. There is nothing that beats 4 hours with no cell phone ringing and just you and your thoughts.
Yes. Yeah, you gotta concentrate just enough where if you're thinking about something else when you're trying to hit a golf ball, you're in trouble.
It doesn't go well.
No.
But I think there's also something to be said about it's just you versus the golf course, right? There's nobody else. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's just you versus something else. And it's an opportunity to just be there and have fun.
Yeah.
And I like that it's just peaceful.
Yeah. What qualities do you value in the people you spend time with?
I would say for sure, drive, success. I want people that are driven. I think you're probably the sum of the 5 and 7 most people you spend the most time with, right? That's kind of, you're the product of that. So I want people that are driven, that are ambitious. I don't want people that settle. I value people that are loyal, that are, at least they'll do what they say they're going to do. I guess is probably a better way to put that. Blind loyalty is terrible, but I think a commitment to honoring your word is good.
Yeah.
Intelligence, for sure. And creativity. Like, anybody can find a reason not to do something, but I like people who can find the one way to do something, right? I'm not interested in the 99 ways it can't happen. I'm very interested in the one way that it can. So that's it. I mean,
yeah, I love it.
Give me smart, driven people who are committed to doing what they say they're going to do, and we'll have a great time.
Yeah. So, Sam, tell us more about just what you're doing at Warschawski. I know you're also, you've got a personal brand as well.
Mm-hmm. So Warschawski, we're a global boutique marketing agency. We tend to work with, mid-market to enterprise brands. We do work with some startups via our venture fund that we launched in 2020. But primarily it's performance marketing, growth marketing, for brands that we love, for brands that are trying to do something interesting, which is fantastic. I'm a person that loves to solve problems. So we get to work with some really cool companies who are doing really amazing things. Like, we work with Don't Packaged Foods. We work with, like CFG Bank, who just completed the naming rights for an arena here in Baltimore. We've got everything from, high growth B2B to, niche B2C and D2C. So it's really interesting for me to be able to see a huge array. We run the gamut again, like plaintiffs' lawyers to bankers to private credit institutions. Get to see so much and help these companies grow. So most of my focus is on our digital, our analytics, and our marketing science teams, but we do a lot of things in-house, and we've built a remarkable team here. So really, I'm thrilled about the work we're doing. And then on the personal side, I just got done with the spring conference circuit. So
that was busy.
It was a lot of cities in relatively few days, but
Yeah.
I did a keynote panel at SMX in Munich on ChatGPT of all things. I was in Vegas for Shop Talk. I was at Social Media Marketing Summit, a few others as well, but been busy. And now I'm looking forward to a little bit of slower season.
Yeah. Little bit more time at home.
A little bit more time at home, a little bit more time to work on some projects. Just little stuff here and there, but it's fun.
So let's talk about ChatGPT.
Why not?
I know in a recent newsletter, you had said ChatGPT was an overconfident high school sophomore. I love this because I think most of us can kind of start thinking back to when we were sophomores. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take a step back, right, the first thing you have to kind of understand is what LLMs are and what they aren't, right? An LLM is, I think the easiest way, which is not a perfect data science explanation, but I think it gets you close enough, is that if we think about machine learning as like having a million interns that can look at something and find patterns at scale, right? Machine learning is basically pattern identification at scale. Sometimes those patterns are interesting and sometimes those patterns aren't interesting, but that's what it fundamentally is. LLM is kind of an inverse of that, right? Where we resolve a linguistic question into a statistics problem and then we pattern match it, right? So if I ask ChatGPT a question, it looks for an answer that is the most probable to something that looks like my question, right? It tries to find the answer to my question based on that matching pattern. So it's less about, I would say, answering a question, and it's more like creating something that looks like an answer to the thing that looks like your question.
Okay. And LLM stands for large language model. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it.
So I think when you think about it in that context, ChatGPT doesn't know anything. It's just taking a linguistic problem and turning it into a statistics problem and then answering the statistics problem, which perfectly well and good. And candidly, it does a really nice job of providing a decently fine response to a lot of questions, right? Just like a high school sophomore would, right? But then if you're truly an expert in that area, you'll look at it and say, this actually isn't right. Like, it sounds good, it looks good, but underlying that, there are problems because, again, you've taken a linguistic question, right? Potentially a factual question, and you turn it into a statistics problem. So I think that's the inherent limitation, and that's why you end up with these like hallucinations, for instance, where I ask ChatGPT to summarize a conversation and it injects somebody into that conversation that wasn't there. Or just yesterday, I was asking it about a medical study for a heart condition, and it cited an article talking about we have a potential investment opportunity in a cardiac implant thing, about the efficacy of these things. When I went to go find that article in the New England Journal of Medicine, it didn't exist. ChatGPT made up an article, right? That said it was in the New England Journal. And if I hadn't, taken that thing and like, let me look at this, let me actually put this into Google, let me see if it's actually there, I never would have known. I mean, the title sounded good. I was like, oh, okay, like efficacy of cardiac implants in, whatever, chronic patients with COPD, right? Or whatever in the world it was.
Yeah.
That sounds like an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, and I don't have a medical degree, but when I looked it up, I was like, that doesn't exist. That's a little problematic.
Yeah. So you gotta, you've gotta check sources if it's listing sources.
100%. I mean, or you have to ask for like where it's coming from or any of that information. And I think when you do that, you start to see like, maybe this isn't this great, right? And then I know there was a Washington Post story, I believe it was last week, about a law professor who ChatGPT accused of sexual harassment. The problem was that law professor had never taught at the college where he allegedly did it and was never actually accused of anything.
So another example, ChatGPT just made it up.
Made it up, along with a Washington Post story allegedly corroborating it that never ran. And then the Washington Post subsequently investigated the Washington Post's investigation of the thing that never happened. But
it's doing that because of how it's structured.
Exactly. It's a probabilistic model. It looks at the word that is most probable to follow the sequence that it has. And sometimes that's another name. Then you get a hallucination, and then it kind of runs with it. And sometimes that's a fake article, like we saw with, the American, that New England Journal of Medicine article, or like this Washington Post. And I'll send you the links. You can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, cool.
It's fascinating that, you'll see some of these models just invent stuff that's just not true, which is really interesting.
I'm still thinking about this confident high school sophomore, right? So it's with these examples, it's kind of like, hey, what do you think? And the high school sophomore is just spitting it out with like complete confidence, and it's total crap.
Correct.
Sometimes it's total crap. It's not always.
No.
But we need to. We can't take what we're getting from ChatGPT at face value.
No, and I think the best way to describe this is basically ChatGPT is giving you an answer that looks like what the answer to a question that yours should be like, right? It's trying to pattern match.
Yeah.
Just like, that machine learning technology identifies patterns latent in a data set. And maybe that pattern is really interesting. And maybe the pattern is just that women tend to have babies, like, duh.
Right.
Right? Like, that's the pattern. And if you look at that pattern, a machine learning model will find that because it is a pattern and it will identify it. But it's not an interesting pattern. It's not a useful pattern. It's just a pattern. And here, we're doing the same thing. We're finding this latent pattern in terms of what your question looks like, and we're formulating an answer based on what we think the answer to that question looks like.
Yeah.
So it's fun. I mean, I think it's a really interesting right? It's an interesting piece of technology.
What do you see as some of the significant limits to ChatGPT that may not be obvious to a lot of us, that we're not thinking about?
So I think the big one is obviously that these are not, an LLM is not an information retrieval system, right? It's not. Like, search is an information retrieval system, and it's a really good one, right? It's just, an LLM is not by definition going to do that, because the LLM generally works on some kind of, it works on a probabilistic model, right? So we all know that there's a lot of garbage on the internet. All that garbage gets fed into the model, and the outputs of the model are largely contingent on the data that was used to train it and the data to which it has access.
Yeah.
Now, in most cases, like ChatGPT, generally speaking, if you put in an answer like, hey, go to the website this, it will say, I don't actually have access to the internet. Right? Because it's not trained on that data. So when you think about what's it good at, it's not good at information retrieval because, number one, it doesn't always have an up-to-date corpus of the actual internet. And number two, it has no way to distinguish between what was written on Reddit by a random, say, neo-fascist user and what was written in the New England Journal of Medicine by a world-renowned cardiologist. It's like two pieces of information.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's the ability of the model to understand and properly weight different sources of information is still not great.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think when you start to get into it even more, you're like, okay, what else is it not particularly great at? One is any kind of like minority opinions or like a marginalized group or anything like that where, the machine is just doesn't understand that it's talking about certain things, right? There is I I think it's kind of more of a societal mirror, right? ChatGPT takes in all the information that we have on the internet, and some of it's really ugly, and it gives it all back to us, just reflected. So I think anytime you have a marginalized group or you talk about, racism or sexism or ableism, ChatGPT is just as terrible as some people are and as nice as some people are. It's just right. So I think when you think about it, like, is this going to properly represent marginalized groups? Is this going to produce content that, is free of some of those discriminatory things? No, not as much as the internet's going to, right? And then when you think about the other stuff, I would say it's not particularly good at any kind of like high level reasoning or strategy.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's not particularly great at logic or reasoning in terms of the way a person might be as good at it. But that's something that can probably improve, but that's good. And I would say the other one that's kind of a little controversial is ChatGPT doesn't understand, right? It doesn't have, I think people think of like artificial intelligence, like, oh, I put in a thing and ChatGPT understood. No, it didn't. It just matched the pattern.
Right.
That's it. It's the same thing if you go to Midjourney, right? Or DALL-E, the image generating platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, show me a picture of a person. It doesn't know that a person has 2 arms and 5 fingers per arm. And, it doesn't understand any of those things. It just understands that this is kind of the way pixels look for people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why there was a recent lawsuit. I believe it was in January. It was filed by Getty because Midjourney DALL-E. Let's not slander Midjourney.
Yeah.
DALL-E was putting the Getty watermark on images it was generating because they trained it on a data set of Getty stock photos. It didn't understand that it was putting a watermark in there.
Right.
Like, images that look like this tend to have this weird pixel setup in the corner with a little line through it that says stock photo.
So we're going to put that there.
Because that's what's in the pattern. It matches the pattern, right? So I think that's that. And I think the last one is an LLM is great for anything where you can tolerate 5% error.
Got it.
Right. Which is, if you're talking about like social media copy, sure, who cares? If you're talking about, the procedure for a craniotomy, 5% error seems bad.
No, yeah, that's not good, right?
Right. If you're talking about options trading, 5% being 5% wrong about how a long straddle works, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Right. If you're talking about, what's the best way to make a paper airplane? Yeah, who cares? You know what I mean? It's a relatively low leverage bet.
Yeah.
So anything, there are plenty of cases where, this also applies to code, right? If 3% of your code is wrong, the thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? Like, can't tolerate that. So, not great. It's just, I think, one of those things where you have to understand the tolerance for error and the impact of that error on the output.
Well, and the current data that ChatGPT is pulling from, is it 2021 or 2022?
So I believe ChatGPT 4. I believe that model includes, I think, up to early
2022,
late 2022, early 2023.
Okay.
Is the GPT-4.
Yeah. So when you're watching or listening to this is a moving target. My point in asking that question is ChatGPT is not pulling live data. It's not pulling stuff from the internet.
No.
It's got a data set that it's working with. So it's also, I think, important to kind of keep that in mind as you're.
Yeah. And I mean, there are some cases where like some applications like Bing's iteration of this can access some things on the web selectively, which is interesting. But by and large, most of these models, they ingest and then they produce, right? They're not the same way. Like Google crawls the internet 24/7, 365.
Yes.
An LLM is not. And I think one of the things most people don't realize is the cost to crawl the web and then to train an LLM on the latest iteration of the web is astounding. Like, we're talking probably orders of magnitude more than what Google currently pays for search. So at this point, it's not economically feasible.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to keep in mind long term, right?
Everyone was talking about how chips are dead. It turns out chips are very much a very good business these days.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? It's almost like these things go in cycles.
Yeah. So we've been talking a bit about kind of some of the downsides to this. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the positives. What do you see as the top 3 to 5 use cases in its current form for business owners?
I mean, I think there's a ton of really interesting stuff. And I think a lot of this is, there's a mental model called the zone of genius, right? And it basically says you have, there's kind of 4 quadrants, so to speak, of how you resolve problems, right? You have your zone of incompetence at the bottom, which is basically stuff you're just terrible at. And you don't know how to do it. You have your zone of competence, which is you can do, but everybody else can do it too. You have a zone of excellence where you can do it better than most, and you have consistently high feedback. You're pretty good. And then there's the zone of genius, which is where you have something that you love doing and that you are one of the best in the world at doing it. Right? If you think about that kind of mental model, I think ChatGPT allows you to spend much more time as a business owner in those zones of genius and excellence, because a lot of the stuff that you are either not good at or you're just merely competent at, you can push onto something like ChatGPT or a ChatGPT powered device or powered application, right? So when you think about this in practical terms, right, that means like content summarization. I don't have to do that anymore. You can give ChatGPT a thing and be like, hey, summarize for me The Intelligent Investor in 2,000 words. Give me 4 pages on what this actually means and the principles underlying it. It will do a pretty good job of that. It may not be perfect, but again, you can tolerate 5% error on The Intelligent Investor. Cool, right? Personalization as a business owner. I know a lot of business owners do sales, right? Yeah. You're constantly reaching out to prospects. You're constantly doing this. You can give it a general template like, hey, these are the services my business offers. This is what makes us unique. Provide a custom cold email to a business owner in the marketing space about why they should use my whatever thing based on this information. And ChatGPT can write you a very nice little, cold email personalized directly to the owner of that business. And there's even like Google Sheets add-ons that do this for you. You can literally have it, go through, here's the list of my prospects, here's their business, here's their name of their company, here's their website. Okay, ChatGPT, based on this information and here's information about my business, go write me a custom pitch for each of these. It'll do that. Right? Super big time saver. Pretty cool. Really huge time saver. Like, as a business owner, that means that you can 5 or 10x out your cold outreach. That could probably result in a lot of money if you're somewhat competent at sales. I think like language translation, it's great at translating stuff. Like, we use this sometimes. Like, we have a couple clients that are international and we need to translate something real quick. Hey, here's this press release in English. Make me a version in Mandarin, please. And it does a job that is 98% acceptable. Yeah. And there might be like, 2 things that are slightly off or it missed a little nuance here or there. But for translating a press release in, say, 3 minutes, fantastic. Yeah. I think it's, great for, at the very least, some types of research. Like, if you're like, hey, find me the 7 biggest objections to hiring a head of marketing for my startup. I need to present this to my board. I want to understand what their objections are going to be so I can be ready. It will do that. It will give you 7 things that people object to and why they shouldn't do it. And you can come up with responses. Same thing for like if you're a writer or you're looking to produce content. Here it is. Write me a blog post on this based on this. It does that. It's great for content generation. I think it needs editing for sure.
Yeah.
Right. But it gives you a sense of what the minimum acceptable threshold is for content and where the kind of state of the market is. So as a business owner, as a marketing executive, as a whatever, you can look at this and say, okay, this is the baseline. How can I take this to the next level? What did it miss? So now you can spend your time, again, doing that higher leverage activity, which is adding high value content into what ChatGPT made versus trying to start from a blank page and figure out what in the world to write.
Yeah, it gives you a great foundation to build from.
100%. It's a productivity enhancer.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Like, I mean, I use, for all of my Zoom meetings, I use Otter AI, which is like a note-taking app, right?
Yeah.
But then I can feed the transcripts from Otter AI into ChatGPT and say, hey, this was my 12 o'clock. Provide me a 2-paragraph summary of the meeting. I get a 2-paragraph summary of the meeting based on what Otter AI transcribed during that hour-long call. And now I've got all that information right here, which super helpful.
It seems to me like one of you kind of touched on this, right? The data that it's pulling from, the quality of that data dictates the quality of the output. But the other big thing that it determines quality of the output is the prompt you actually put into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to kind of see that evolve, because I think all of us are still pretty new at this, and it's like, oh, that probably didn't do a very good job on that prompt. But what I'm seeing too is there's people that are writing prompts that you can load right into ChatGPT and play with it. So there's a lot of really exciting things going on there.
Yeah.
That kind of cool to see unfold.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the next, say, 12 to 24 months, prompt engineering is going to be a big thing. Because to your point, the outputs are so conditional on the input that it makes sense to understand the right ways to craft those inputs.
Yeah.
But I think once you get past that, you're going to start to see some of those potential, we're not sure about this, kind of go away, right? You'll start to see some of that. Either in the form of the platform suggesting like, hey, actually, this is a better prompt. Are you okay with that? Or, hey, we noticed your prompt is missing context. This is the context that it actually needs to produce an acceptable result. So can you please give us piece A of context, piece B of context, please piece C of context, so we can generate a more relevant response. And once that starts to happen, I think the incremental value of prompt engineering declines.
It goes away. Yeah.
Right. But like for the next 12 to 24 months, I think you have a huge arbitrage opportunity. If you are better at it than everybody else, you will get better content out of ChatGPT faster, which if you go back to that kind of 4 models framework, spends, again, more time in that zone of excellence or the zone of genius, because you don't have to worry. You don't have to put in 7 prompts to ChatGPT. You just know exactly what to put in there. You get in there, you get your answer. And by the time guy who doesn't understand the prompt finally gets an acceptable response, you're on to task 7 or 8. Like you're running down the road ahead of them. Yeah. Right. I think, but again, I don't think it's going to be a durable advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you touched on this too, where, I mean, there's so many different tools out there that are starting to incorporate ChatGPT. I know Google's got theirs. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but Bard. Yes. Yeah. So you can bet Google's not too far behind.
I mean, I think Google's probably, this is a controversial thing to say, but I think Google, from a technological standpoint, is probably ahead, right?
Yeah.
But from a go-to-market standpoint, I think they're behind.
Yeah.
But then again, like you look at ChatGPT, right? It's based on a language a transformer. Google's DeepMind is the one that actually wrote the original paper on that. They're the ones that invented it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, and they did it like 5 or 6 years ago. They did it in 2017, I think. So like Google's got, I would say, probably the deepest AI team in the world. It's one of those cases where I'm looking at, I'm like, all right, like, you know, this is a really bad metaphor, but you know, there's only so long you keep LeBron down, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you know what? You know, maybe OpenAI did like get like a couple games on him real quick, but it's like, all right, they're catching up really quick, and they've got a huge advantage in terms of data. They've got a huge advantage in terms of talent. They've got a huge financial advantage.
Yeah. We're only in the first inning of this ball game. So
yeah. I mean, and to be very clear, like OpenAI won the first inning.
Yeah.
They won. Yeah. They did. The fact that ChatGPT has gotten the adoption that it's gotten in the period that it's gotten it is remarkable. And they've certainly moved fast, and they've done some great things. But I think before we anoint them winner of the AI wars, we should probably at least see a few more innings of baseball.
Yeah. Totally agree. Well, you know, it's interesting, man. I signed up for somebody sent me something about an email list where the guy sends out, you know, just AI updates daily. And what I found fascinating is I think this guy started this thing 3 months ago. He has over 100,000 email subscribers at this point.
It's amazing.
And he just left he started as a side gig, right? And he just put out an email going, hey, I just left my job so I can focus on this full time. But it just goes to show you how much demand and interest there is in this right now. It is a super hot topic. It is changing quickly. I just think we need to be open-minded as business owners about it and stay on top of it and embrace things as they change and use it to our advantage. Because like you said, I think from a productivity enhancement standpoint, right now where it's at, it can save us so much time.
100%.
We just need to be open to how it can actually do that.
100%. I mean, I also teach at Hopkins in Georgetown, right? And I know in academia, there's this whole thing about ChatGPT where like we don't want it, it's scary, it's bad. Like we're gonna ban it from assignments, and I'm like, but why? Like,
yeah,
you don't get to close Pandora's box. Like students are going to use this one way or the other. So your options are either teach them how to use it and give them the tools to succeed in the modern workforce, or try to repress it and lose, because you will lose. So like in my classes, if you want to use ChatGPT, go for it. I don't care. But you're held to the same standard, right? So if ChatGPT makes a mistake and you don't catch it,
that's a problem, right?
That's a problem. That's a huge problem, right? Yep. It's no different than a math class. We don't make you, do multivariable calculus by yourself. Like we have Wolfram, it solves it for you.
Yeah.
But you have to understand what to put in and how to evaluate the response and determine if the response is correct based on what you put in.
Yeah.
Same principle. So I think it's about, like you said, understanding how to use it. And I'm hoping that more colleges get better at it, because we're in a place where ChatGPT is a reality. It is not going away. It will never go away at this point. Pandora's box is open. So as employers, we want people that can come in that actually understand the technology and understand how to use it, and can do some of these things like prompt engineering, and can do some of these things like understanding the right context to give it so that we can get the right response. And then when they get the response, being able to look at it critically and, add in those higher order bits that ChatGPT isn't capable of, like big picture strategy, like logic and reasoning. Like those are big picture bits that we need a person to come in and make it better. Yeah. And that's a skill. That's a big skill. At least I'm not sure about your business, but in our business, that's a huge skill.
Yes.
So I want people to be better at it because it's better for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, you touched on this too. It's ChatGPT and similar technologies, at least at this point, they're the strategic. From a strategic standpoint, it's not there.
No.
And
I don't think it's. I mean, and candidly, I don't know if it ever. I don't think an LLM ever gets there.
Yeah, I don't
because
think
of
so
the
either.
inherent limitations of the model itself.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you start to, Frankenstein these models together, and you start putting in an entity or an identity graph, like what maybe Google's been building for the last decade.
Yeah.
Wonder why they invested a ton of money in that. Who knows, right? And then you start adding in a reasoning engine and a logic engine. You start being able to combine these things together in a really interesting way. Then I think you get closer to something that can think strategically. But until then, ChatGPT is a high school sophomore. Maybe it gets a little smarter. Maybe it becomes a junior in a year or two. But there's a reason high school juniors generally don't run multi-billion-dollar enterprises.
Right. Yeah. That's right. This has been a great conversation, Sam. Any last minute thoughts you want to leave us with today?
I mean, I think a lot of it is what I said at the end. This is a part of what we're doing now. This is Pandora's box has been opened. The bell has been rang. So now we have to figure out how to live in this world and how to make the most of what we have in this world. So I hope people spend time playing with it. I hope people spend time using the models and understanding the limitations, because if you can, you'll get ahead. And if you can't, sorry, you'll lose.
Yeah.
But it's exciting.
It is exciting. So where can people learn more about you?
Sure. So best place, I have a website, samtomlinson.me. I write a newsletter every week called The Digital Download, which is the kind of one of those editions is what spurred this chat.
Yes.
So you can sign up. It's free. I don't do ads or anything. It's just a newsletter. I work at Warschawski. If you have any marketing questions, you need help with advertising, warschawski.com. But that's it. And if you want to talk to me personally, I'm on Twitter, DigitalSamIam.
Cool. I love it.
Yep.
Connect with Sam, reach out. We'll make sure those links are in the show notes. I have enjoyed connecting with you twice now. So thank you so much for doing that. Like I said, I'm super impressed. So reach out, connect with Sam. Those of you that are watching, listening, I appreciate you. You can always connect with us over at rialtomarketing.com. If you want to discover which of the 9 revenue roadblocks are slowing down your growth, you can do that over at revenueroadblockscorecard.com. It takes less than 5 minutes to discover and assess which roadblocks are slowing down your growth. So thank you so much. Till next time. Take care.